The last 9 months have been incredibly tough for us as a family. Life as you know it can change in an instant, and we've had to...
The statement appeared on Kensington Palace's official channels at 4:17 that afternoon, and its words landed with crushing force. Catherine's medical team had exhausted standard treatment options. Her condition had deteriorated significantly, and the family was now bracing for outcomes no one had wanted to consider. What the palace implied between the lines felt even more devastating than what it stated outright. The announcement came without warning or the usual advance briefings to senior media, and within minutes it dominated news cycles around the world. In just 143 words, it acknowledged what months of cautious optimism had tried to avoid. The Princess of Wales's condition had progressed beyond the scope of standard treatment protocols. After extensive consultations with specialists in the UK and internationally, the decision had been made to transition to supportive care focused on quality of life and symptom management. Catherine would continue to receive round-the-clock medical attention at home, surrounded by her family, while the Prince of Wales and their children expressed gratitude for her care and asked for privacy during this profoundly difficult time. This stage, no further medical updates would be provided, and for those familiar with medical terminology, the meaning of the statement was unmistakable as it appeared on screens around the world. Social media erupted within seconds, with the announcement posted simultaneously on X, Instagram, and the official palace website to ensure maximum reach and prevent misinterpretation. Within 5 minutes, Catherine's name was trending globally, and the reaction in Britain was immediate and deeply emotional. Over the years, Catherine had become perhaps the most beloved member of the royal family, admired for her grace, her commitment to early childhood development, and her evident devotion to her children, qualities that fostered public affection beyond typical royal interest. American media, which had closely followed her health journey throughout the year, intensified its coverage, while the most devastating aspect of the statement lay in what it omitted. No timelines, no indication of weeks or months, and none of the hopeful framing that had characterized earlier updates. The absence of optimism spoke volumes, as the palace's carefully chosen language seemed to close doors rather than leave them open. Within an hour, Buckingham Palace issued its own brief acknowledgement, with King Charles implicitly confirming that the situation concerned Catherine's death rather than recovery. Prince Harry, contacted at his home in the United States, declined to comment, though sources suggested he was attempting to return to the UK, rendering long-standing family estrangements suddenly insignificant in the face of William potentially losing his wife. By 5 p.m., Downing Street released a statement from the Prime Minister offering the nation's thoughts and prayers, followed an hour later by a call for prayer and reflection from the Archbishop of Canterbury. By 7 p.m., crowds had gathered outside the gates of Kensington Palace and Adelaide Cottage, leaving flowers and messages despite the December cold. Beneath the official statements and relentless media coverage, however, one stark reality prevailed. A 42-year-old mother of 3 was nearing the end of her life, and the clinical language of the palace could not soften the profound unfairness and devastation of that truth. There had been nothing in Catherine's life or medical history to suggest she would face cancer at such a young age, and yet she now stood at the end of standard treatment options, transitioning to palliative care and preparing to leave behind a husband who loved her and 3 children who still needed her. The statement released at 4:17 was the palace's way of beginning to prepare the nation and the world for a loss that was approaching far more quickly than anyone had imagined. Behind the carefully chosen language lay a stark medical reality, as the phrase exhausted standard treatment options carried a weight fully understood only by those familiar with cancer care. It meant Catherine had undergone every protocol her medical team believed had a reasonable chance of success, and each had either failed to halt the disease or had worked only temporarily before the cancer continued to progress. Her journey had begun with what doctors described as a favorable prognosis. Surgery in January successfully removed the primary tumor, and chemotherapy through the spring initially showed promising results, with scans suggesting the cancer was retreating. That optimism faded in August when follow-up scans revealed new growth where there should have been none, confirming the cancer had metastasized to lymph nodes and, most concerning, to her liver. Liver involvement dramatically altered the prognosis, signaling that the cancer had entered her bloodstream and could spread anywhere. A second-line treatment began in September, combining more aggressive chemotherapy with targeted therapy aimed at specific characteristics of her cancer cells. But it took a severe toll on her body, causing intense fatigue, nausea, and escalating pain that required stronger medication. For 6 weeks, the treatment appeared to work, with late October scans showing halted growth and slight shrinkage in some areas. But by mid-November the disease had resumed its advance, with new sites appearing and clear evidence that the cancer had mutated and developed resistance. Catherine's oncologist explained to her and William that this represented the worst-case scenario, a cancer evolving faster than medical science could contain. The final attempt involved experimental immunotherapy, a cutting-edge approach offered through a clinical trial that sought to train Catherine's own immune system to recognize and attack the cancer cells. The immunotherapy had been a last resort option, accompanied by extensive disclosure forms acknowledging limited data and highly uncertain outcomes, and it failed dramatically within 3 weeks. Catherine's body reacted adversely to the treatment, and scans revealed that instead of activating her immune system against the cancer, the therapy appeared to accelerate disease progression. The clinical trial was immediately halted for her, and her medical team shifted from pursuing further treatments to acknowledging that nothing remained that could meaningfully change the outcome. The meeting in which Catherine's lead oncologist explained the transition to palliative care took place on December 4th, 5 days before the public statement, with William present alongside Catherine's parents, who had become increasingly involved as her condition worsened. The oncologist was compassionate but direct, explaining that continued aggressive treatment would only weaken Catherine further without extending her life and could even shorten the time she had left. William asked the question every family asks in that moment: how long, and was told that while prognoses at this stage were imprecise, a realistic range was weeks to a few months. Catherine would almost certainly not see spring, might not reach her 43rd birthday in January, and was unlikely to be alive for Charlotte's 10th birthday in May or George's 13th in July. William had arrived at the December 4th consultation expecting difficult news but still believing there would be more options to discuss, more protocols to try, clinging to the idea that modern medicine had not yet exhausted every possibility. Dr. Rebecca Thornton, Catherine's lead oncologist, greeted him with an expression he immediately recognized, the look clinicians have when they are about to deliver life-altering news, and his stomach dropped before she spoke, recalling the same feeling from years earlier during his grandmother's illness. Catherine joined the consultation via video link from Adelaide Cottage, too weak to travel to London but determined to be present as the reality of her condition was finally and irrevocably laid bare. Catherine had insisted on being part of every discussion about her care, even when she was too weak to attend in person, and her parents, Carol and Michael Middleton, sat visibly beside her on the screen during the consultation. The very setup of the meeting underscored the severity of the situation. Catherine, unable to travel, listening from home as her doctors delivered devastating news. Dr. Thornton began with the clinical facts before explaining their implications. The latest scans showed extensive disease progression. The immunotherapy had not only failed but appeared to have accelerated the cancer's growth. Catherine's liver function was declining, new metastases had appeared in her lungs, and multiple organ systems were now affected, indicating an increasingly aggressive disease that would continue to spread. William asked about alternative treatments, experimental protocols, and trials elsewhere in the world, but Dr. Thornton was prepared for each question and gently closed every remaining door. Catherine no longer qualified for other trials, and the treatments that did exist required a level of physical strength she no longer had. Attempting them would likely hasten her death rather than prolong her life. Continuing aggressive intervention would guarantee suffering without offering meaningful hope. The prognosis, delivered with professional compassion that could not soften its brutality, was measured in weeks to months. With optimal symptom management and some luck, Catherine might have 3 to 4 months, but more realistically 6 to 8 weeks, with the possibility of sudden decline shortening that timeline to days. What was certain was that she would not recover, and that the time remaining was far less than any of them had allowed themselves to believe. William then asked to speak privately with Dr. Thornton, and Catherine agreed, understanding his need to process the reality without feeling he had to protect her. The private conversation, which lasted nearly half an hour, was the hardest William had faced since his mother's death, as he asked for complete honesty about what Catherine would experience in her final weeks. The pain, the effects of high-dose medication, the physical decline, and the risk of sudden crises so he could prepare himself and, as much as possible, their children. Dr. Thornton explained that palliative care had advanced greatly and that Catherine's pain could be well controlled, though often at the expense of alertness and clarity. She would likely sleep more, withdraw gradually as her body conserved energy, and experience moments of presence mixed with increasing confusion. When the end came, it would most likely be peaceful, a gradual slipping away rather than a dramatic crisis, though complications could always alter that course. William had asked a question that laid bare the depths of his fear and grief. How do I tell George that his mother is dying? How do I prepare an 11-year-old to lose the most important person in his life? Dr. Thornton had no easy answers, referring him to specialists who help children cope with terminal illness and a parent, but acknowledging that nothing about this situation was fair, manageable, or something a child should ever have to face. When William rejoined the video consultation, he found Catherine crying, held between her parents, Carol and Michael Middleton, who were struggling to maintain their composure. The weight of the prognosis, the reality that she would likely not see her children grow up, miss graduations, weddings, and the joy of grandchildren had finally pierced Catherine's carefully maintained strength. She had always focused on next steps, treatment options, and preserving hope, but there were no more next steps left, only the final step, one she would ultimately face alone, even as her family tried to walk with her as far as they could. The conversation that followed, with William in Dr. Thornton's office and Catherine at Adelaide Cottage, covered practical matters that felt surreal in their finality. Where did she want to spend her remaining time? Adelaide Cottage, close to her children. Did she want to draft advance directives about medical interventions if complications arose? Yes, she wanted clarity that aggressive measures would not be taken if they would only prolong the dying process. Did she want to discuss how to help the children say goodbye? That question broke them both anew. William sobbing in the doctor's office, Catherine weeping on screen. The reality of leaving George, Charlotte, and Louis motherless was finally impossible to rationalize or defer. By the time the consultation ended, William understood that his life had been irrevocably altered. He was no longer just a husband supporting his wife through illness. He was a man preparing to assume a role unheard of within the royal family. The drive back to Adelaide Cottage that afternoon carried him through London streets adorned with Christmas lights and decorations, a stark contrast to the grief weighing heavily on him. The conversations with the children were unbearably difficult. George had sensed something catastrophic was coming ever since that morning when his father had sat him down privately, just the two of them, and told him with devastating directness that his mother was dying. William had chosen to speak with George first, separately from Charlotte and Louis, because at 11, George was old enough to grasp death in concrete terms and needed time to process it before seeing his younger siblings' reactions. The conversation took place in William's study at Adelaide Cottage. The door closed, the house quiet. William explained that the doctors had done everything they could, that new treatments hadn't worked, and that Catherine would likely die within weeks or months. George sat very still, his face drained of color, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. When he finally spoke, his question was practical, yet heartbreakingly profound. What happens to us when she dies? Where do we go? Who takes care of us? William reassured him that his practical needs would be met, that he would always be there, and that grandparents and extended family would support them. But George's question revealed a deeper fear, not about logistics, but about whether life could continue in any recognizable way without his mother, the organizing center of their family who understood each child's needs, fears, and dreams. The conversation extended over an hour, with George asking about medical details, whether his mother was in pain, and whether the doctors could be wrong. William answered honestly, maintaining the commitment to truth he and Catherine had established after Charlotte's earlier questions. What George struggled with most was the unfairness. His mother had done everything right, led a healthy life, and had no reason to expect cancer at 42. Charlotte and Louis were told together later that day, with both William and Catherine present. Despite her weakness, Catherine insisted on being part of the conversation, needing her children to hear directly from her that she loved them and that her dying did not mean she was abandoning them, even though it would feel that way. The family spent the rest of the day simply being together, Catherine resting on the sofa while the children sat nearby, sometimes talking, sometimes crying, sometimes just quietly sharing space. William took photographs and videos of ordinary moments, knowing they would become precious memories of the last times the family was together with Catherine still alive. The ordinariness of watching a movie together or sharing a simple dinner felt sacred, because everyone understood how limited these moments were. In the days that followed, the household adjusted to a new reality. The children understood their mother was dying but still present, and they had to learn how to be with her without every interaction feeling like a goodbye. George became almost formal, treating his mother with gentle care as though practicing for her absence, while Charlotte coped by staying physically close, sitting with Catherine whenever she could. The children coped with their mother's illness in different ways. Charlotte stayed as close as possible, as if absorbing enough of her mother's presence to carry it forward. Louis oscillated between normal play and distress, sometimes acting as if nothing were wrong, other times suddenly crying and asking when his mother would die. William and Catherine structured the children's remaining time carefully. School continued for routine, but the children could stay home whenever they wanted to be with Catherine. Activities and commitments were canceled to maximize family time. The household was kept quiet, with only essential staff present, creating space for the family to be together without performance or management. Most importantly, the children were allowed to talk openly about death, ask questions, and express feelings without adults redirecting them toward false optimism. One of the most challenging conversations involved life after Catherine. The children needed assurance that William had plans and that their lives would continue with structure and care. He explained that they would remain at Adelaide Cottage, that school routines would continue as much as possible, and that family and staff would be there to support them and ensure they were never alone with their grief. He also promised that they would always talk about their mother, keep her memory alive, and make sure she would never be forgotten. Catherine, too, was preparing her children in her own way, writing letters for each child to be opened at future milestones, their 18th birthdays, weddings, and when they became parents themselves. She was creating a way to remain present in their lives even after her death, offering wisdom and love across the years. The children knew these letters existed, and this awareness made her impending death feel both more real and more unbearable. All three children asked, in different ways, whether their mother was scared. Catherine answered honestly that she was afraid of leaving them, missing their lives, and facing the unknown that comes with death. That honesty, though painful, helped the children more than any display of false bravery could have. As December progressed and Catherine grew weaker, the children slowly adjusted their expectations for what time with their mother would look like. Meanwhile, King Charles confronted his own grief and the implications for the monarchy. He received William's urgent call on December 4th while at Clarence House reviewing briefing papers for an upcoming state visit. His private secretary had interrupted to say the Prince of Wales needed to speak immediately. Within minutes of hearing William break down over the phone, Charles understood that the news from Catherine's doctors was catastrophic. Over the years, Charles's relationship with Catherine had evolved from viewing her as a formal future daughter-in-law to holding genuine affection and respect. She had become exactly the kind of person the monarchy needed, someone who understood duty but maintained warmth, handled scrutiny without becoming hardened, and brought stability and grace to William's life during a period when the family's public and private challenges were intensifying. The institution desperately needed both Catherine's stabilizing presence and her extraordinary example. Charles had watched her grow into an exceptional mother, a devoted working royal, and a woman who had earned genuine public affection in ways that could neither be manufactured nor performed. The thought of losing her and of witnessing his son become a widower and his grandchildren lose their mother tapped into Charles's own experiences with grief, making the sorrow almost unbearable. He knew the particular pain of watching someone you love confront mortality while feeling powerless to intervene. Yet his own losses had arrived in the natural order of life, elderly parents at the end of long lives. This grief, profound as it was, had to coexist with his constitutional responsibilities. 2 days after William's call, Charles convened a meeting including his private secretary, the most senior constitutional advisors, and Princess Anne. The discussion was among the most difficult of his reign, forcing Charles to think strategically about family tragedy even as he processed his own emotions. And, characteristically direct, framed the issues with brutal clarity, pressing the family to confront timelines and contingencies the palace had long avoided. Even the question of William's eventual remarriage was raised, an issue everyone recognized as premature, even inappropriate but constitutionally relevant given that the heir to the throne, responsible for 3 children including a future king, would likely require a partner at some point. Charles shut down the discussion immediately. "My daughter-in-law is still alive, and my son is facing the worst crisis of his life. We are not discussing his future romantic prospects while he sits vigil at his dying wife's bedside." The rebuke was sharp enough to end the topic for that meeting, though Charles knew it would inevitably resurface. The monarchy, like the family, was now confronting a profound tension between personal grief and public duty, thought in terms of generations and dynasties, aware that William's personal happiness would always be weighed against the needs of the institution. The more immediate challenge was managing the period of mourning that would inevitably follow. Princess Anne had advocated for maximum flexibility, allowing William to grieve privately without forcing him prematurely into public duties. Charles had agreed, instructing his team to ensure extended royal family coverage of William's responsibilities, with Anne, Edward, and even Charles himself absorbing more than advisors would have thought appropriate for a king in his mid-70s. Charles was clear. Catherine would be remembered not merely as the Princess of Wales, but as one of the most significant figures in modern royal history. Yet beneath all the planning, protocol, and institutional considerations, he remained simply a father, watching his son suffer. He visited Adelaide Cottage almost daily, sitting with William and Catherine, playing with the children, and providing whatever comfort his presence could offer. Catherine, meanwhile, was focused on her final chapter. Since the December 4th consultation, she had known her time was measured and limited, and she made a conscious decision about how to spend it. She would not waste the weeks she had left on denial, bitterness, or rage at the unfairness. Instead, she chose to channel whatever energy remained into creating something that would outlast her, a legacy not defined by public accomplishments, but by the intimate feeling of a mother's love, preserved for children who would need it long after she was gone. Writing letters had become her primary focus on days when she was strong enough to hold a pen, But the project had expanded to include advice, memories, and expressions of love for moments she could not predict but wanted to address. George's letters were the most difficult because Catherine knew he would bear the heaviest burdens. As a future king, he would face pressures and expectations no mother could shield him entirely from. She wrote about duty and sacrifice, but also about finding joy and authenticity within constraints that could feel suffocating. One letter, written for George's 18th birthday, expressed her hopes for the kind of king he would become, emphasizing empathy and the reminder that every person he would meet as king was someone's child, someone beloved, someone who mattered. Charlotte's letters, in contrast, focused on guiding her through the unique challenges of being the spare, a role Catherine had watched Harry struggle with and wanted Charlotte to navigate differently. Catherine's letters to her children reflected her deep understanding of their individual needs and the roles they would grow into. To Charlotte, she wrote about the freedom that came with being important but not central, encouraging her to build a life of meaning beyond royal obligation. She shared memories of her own childhood, growing up without royal status, and encouraged Charlotte to remain close to her brothers, especially to be someone George could confide in as he bore the weight of his future. Louis's letters were simpler, recognizing that he would be only 6 when she died and might not remember her as vividly. She wrote of his curiosity, humor, and innocence, preserving memories of his early years the day he was born, the joy of completing their family, and assured him that her love would remain fierce and undiminished, even in her absence. Beyond letters, Catherine was creating a legacy through video and audio recordings, reading favorite children's books and telling stories of her life, ensuring her voice would remain familiar to them. She also engaged in final conversations with the people who mattered most, asking them to stay close to William and the children. Her sister Pippa became a key support for Charlotte, promising to guide her through adolescence and young adulthood without the complications a stepmother might bring. Catherine and William spent late nights reflecting on their marriage, their love, and their life together. Catherine insisted that one of her final gifts was granting William permission to eventually find joy and companionship after her death, relieving him of guilt for moving forward. The hardest moments for Catherine were those when she fully allowed herself to feel the weight of her loss. In late nights, often awake due to pain or medication, she thought about the milestones she would never see: George's graduation, his coronation, Charlotte's wedding, and Louis growing into a man. Yet, in these days and hours, she found peace in simple, intimate moments. Talking with her children in bed, reminiscing over old photographs with William, laughing and crying together, and simply holding her children. These small moments, filled with love and presence, gave her a profound sense of fulfillment that transcended the tragedy of dying young. Her final chapter was measured not in years, but in the precious, fleeting hours she could spend fully with her family. In her courage, grace, and deliberate care, Catherine left a lasting legacy of loved one that would support her children and husband, and remind the nation why she had been so deeply cherished.